Hello trappers, Ed Snyder, Kansas Trapline Products, bringing you this new YouTube video. And today's topic is learning how to grade our own fur. What is it that the fur buyer is looking for when he's judging our fur? We ought to have a little bit of an idea if we have a good coyote or a bad coyote. Stick with me here and let's go through some of my fur to help you judge your own. Okay trappers, I have my fur here. It's put up and I have a nice pile of them sitting right here and we're going to go through them. I want to first talk about, this is a pretty good coyote for my area. You got to understand, for my area, what do I have? I kind of jokingly tell a lot of my students, and to some degree there's not just a joke, it's some truth in it. I think just about every area can have themselves a good Dakota coyote, and some of them can have more of a southern flat coyote. We just have to know whether we have that Dakota type coyote or Montana type coyote, that type of thing. It's not important so much about that, about the region, as it is to know whether you have a good fur or not. That's the important part. So let's begin right now. One of the things that the market is desiring right now is everybody talks about a nice white belly. Well, it's not really the belly that they're after as much as it indicates maybe what the back's going to look. Having a nice white belly sometimes means that we're going to have a nice lighter color back. Now for my area, this is a very good coyote for the area I trap. What I like about this coyote is that the coyote itself is lighter in color. I like the fact that I always like it when I have just a single little black streak through it. If you look at some of the finer coyotes, that's kind of what it is. The other side about a lighter coyote is that the guard hairs actually stand up a little. They stand out a little bit more, not stand up, but stand out. The little black tips, things like that. So that's one of the things. So when you see I'm going to grab another coyote here. I'll grab this one with it. We have this is a coyote taken out of another area. Now this pelt right here is a heavier pelt when you look at the length of fur on it, but we're starting to get into a darker color coyote. Let me grab another one here. This is about as dark as I'm going to have. But if we look at this coyote, and I'm going to try to shine it in the light a little bit, we can see how dark brown this particular coyote is. It's a much darker coyote. And the fur buyer, this coyote here is not going to go in the same pile as that first coyote. It's just the way they're going to, color does mean a lot. Here's the belly side, but let's focus on the back. The darker color coyotes, to my understanding, it doesn't mean absolute. I want to make sure you understand this. From my understanding, the darker color coyotes are a little or less desirable than the lighter color coyotes. So one of the things I think you're going to see from your fur buyer is this coyote here, he might be a number 2 or 3 out of 4 piles. Nothing wrong with the coyote itself, and we're gonna get into the grading aspect of it as far as what are we looking for. But the fact is, this coyote out of 4 piles might make it down to the pile number 3 out of 4, simply because it's got a very dark pelt. It doesn't have that desired lighter color. Fur buyers have a responsibility to themselves, and I want you to understand this. He's going to buy this fur at a price that he figures he can make money at. That's the rule. Does he want to double his money? Let's just use that as an example. So you get paid $6, he intends to make $12. He has to put in the work in it or whatever. If you bring him in green, the price will go down from there. The real secret from our perspective, in my mind, is knowing when to say no. No, I'm not going to take $6 for this coyote. No, this coyote's worth more than that. So no, I'm not going to. If you're going to put a top of 6 on this, well then I'm going to do something else, or I'll go to somebody else, one or the other. That's the power of having some knowledge about your fur, is understanding the process. So let's look at the parts of the coyote that make a difference in making a coyote good, besides color. The first thing we want to look at here is we want to look at from a fur quality standpoint. I need to be able to see guard hairs. That's very important. I need to see guard hairs on this coyote. I need to be able to look in a special spot that they're going to look at is the flank area. Is there guard hairs in this flank area? This guy's fine. Next, the next part of it is you might see your fur buyer on a table run his fingers down the center of the back. He'll run it right down the center against the table. He's actually checking. You can feel whether you feel the board or are you feeling fur. That's the under fur of the coyote. If it feels soft to you when you run it down the coyote's back, you have under fur. If it feels like the table that you're running it across, well, that coyote's quite a bit weaker. That's very important to judge your coyote pelts. For me, this is an outstanding pelt. I expect to at least be treated fairly on it out of what I have. This should probably be in the number one, unless the buyer sees something different. But the thing is I know whether or not it's one of my better pelts or not. So by having this knowledge, I know what I'm getting into. When we get into the dark pelt, remember the pile 1, 2, 3, 4, if we're going to use that as an example. 4 generally is for your coyote pelts that shows some form of damage. Now that doesn't necessarily mean you did a thing wrong. It could just simply mean that this coyote is weak in other areas, that it has problems with the pelt. I wouldn't necessarily say a coarse hair coyote's going to make it into the bottom pile just because this is the way this coyote is. But if all of a sudden I'm weak if I'm very weak on the, say I don't have many guard hairs sticking out. There's a phrase also called too much gray. Too much gray. And what that means is the under fur is what's showing, meaning you don't have any guard hairs. So you could have that. Second thing, if you look at it from a belly perspective, is this full? This coyote's still full. It's nothing wrong with the coyote other than the fact he's going to be, and probably because of his color, he's going to probably make it into my pile number 3. We look at another coyote. Now this coyote is much weaker in the Iroquois. We're starting to get into the damage category. There's nothing wrong that I did, just the fact that the coyote is right on the edge of it. So color on this particular coyote, it's a little darker. It has nice long fur on that side of it. We look over here at the belly. It's not too bad. Most of these coyotes I have are not too bad. If I run my finger down, now that's thin on this guy. So guess what? It's probably going to go. It's going to be a toss-up with the buyer whether he wants to put it in number 4 or number 3 pile. Let's look at another coyote. This coyote here looks at it from the surface to be a well-furred coyote. If I look at the Iroquois, it has under fur. That part's good. I look down here at the flank. I have some wonderful guard hairs. You see the guard hairs sticking up there in the camera. I have some good guard hairs. The belly itself is nice and full. And then let me run my fingers down it. I'm going to run it. Oh, that's nice. That's got a nice thick fur there. So this coyote here has a choice of going to my number 1 or number 2, and I'm going to say, for the sake of this discussion, it's a little darker than number 1, than the first coyote we did. So this coyote now is going to go in my number 2 pile. Does that make sense? It's primarily based upon color. Then you have to have quality is the next phase. So I got a number 1, I got a number 2, and I got 2 number 3s. We'll look at the next coyote. Again, a darker color coyote, a strike against this rascal. I look at the Iroquois, at the nape of the neck. It's okay, but it's a little thin. It's not where you'd like to go. Has some red in this coyote. That's not helping this guy out a bit. We look down here. If I run my fingers down, now that part's okay in here. It gets a little thin up by the Iroquois, so that's going to hurt the coyote. We look here at the belly side. The belly looks fine. There's no problem with it. We look also at our guard hairs, And this guy still has plenty of guard hairs there, so that's not a problem. However, I don't like the color. This coyote's going to go in the number 3 pile. It's just the color isn't there, and it's a little weak in the Iroquois. This is I specifically picked out this pup that I personally wish I wouldn't have skinned, but it's a great example of a number 4 coyote. If I can show you that, the Iroquois here is very empty right now. A lot of that fur came out, whether it came out in the processing or I just didn't see it. The nap itself is very flat. It's a flat coyote. The skin itself is prime as far as the color. It's not a blue hide, but it has is what they would call a flat coyote. On top of it, it's thin. When you look at this belly, do you start to see a little bit more pink? Now I can whiten that up a little bit using some borax. That being said, it's weak. It's very, very weak. You can almost see the skin through the belly. So the color as a whole isn't too bad. I'm going to try to show it. The color isn't bad, but I am weak right here. If I run my fingers down, it just feels like leather. It feels like leather. Right down the center of the back. Guess which pile this is going to go into? That's right, number 4. So this is a damaged coyote, and through no fault of my own. The coyote is weak in many different ways, this pup. It never really came into its fur. It probably has a little bit of mite or mange in the animal, indicated by the fur pelt, which probably also got affected my Iroquois on the coyote. I hope this type of a discussion can help you. I wish I could change the bottom end price, the average price and that type of thing. But I wanted to show you, even in my own fur, how few coyotes, and granted I hand picked these, but to have a true number 1 coyote, it's nice to know what you got when you get into it. Understand, if you look at your piles, at your own quality of fur, you can make some decisions on which one it is. I have, let's see, we did one. I have about 1 out of 7 out of the ones I selected, and I specifically went for this. But I'll have maybe 1 per 50 to 75 coyotes that's going to be in this. It's going to be a damage. You're going to have, so let's say you get 200 coyotes, you have 4 of them that end up in the bottom pile, using that as an example. It can happen. Understand that your number 1 coyote, that pile is going to struggle to be a number 1. Your most common piles, because we can find defects in all of the fur we have, but a number 2 or a number 3 is going to be your common ones. They're the ones that might be a little bit negotiable about putting a few of them in the number 1 or a few of them into the number 2 pile. But for the most part, that's how a fur buyer would grade your fur, looking at these factors on the trap line. I hope this helped you like it helped me many years ago. Tight chains, trappers.